So everybody probably wants to know how to restore photos in Photoshop. This is actually a pretty easy thing. I picked this really crazy photo. Looks like it was, these could all be my cousins and my brothers from back in the 60s, but that's neither here nor there. So with this, you can affect changes by coming up here to make adjustments. Okay, and there's all kinds of controls under there. But I think a more effective way of approaching this is to go to your Layers panel and add Adjustment Layers. Okay, so we're going to first make a selection. So I'm going to draw a box with the Marquee tool around just this half. Okay, and now I'm going to go to Color Balance and click on that. So now in Color Balance, we can change all kinds of things. We've got midtones, shadows, highlights. So usually I like to start off with the midtones, and we have an example of how the photo should look over here to the right. And you'll notice that when we created our adjustment layer, we have a mask, so the active area is only over here, which means that I'm not going to affect any changes to the area that's already been restored. So let's take a look here. I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to change. It looks like we've got tons of magenta, so what if we add some cyan? Probably not. We can add some yellow. We can add some green. We can probably try and neutralize that background as much as possible. Okay, so now it's not quite got that crazy cast to it. Let's see what we can do in our shadows. So the shadows are still looking a lot of magenta in there. What if we put some green back in? So I think that's helping a little bit. Let's see what happens if we add some yellow. Not so much. Not so much. So a lot of these sliders are just going to be experimental, and you can kind of play with things to see what works. Alright, let's see what happens with highlights. So here I'm looking at the highlights. I don't see a whole lot of pinks in there, so let's try and dial in some reds and get some of that back going on. And here we've kind of got a neutral background going there. I think that's about as good as we're going to get with that. So that would be just a start. There are a lot of other different tools that we can use. Let's take a look at some of the other ones. So we can go down here to Hue and Saturation. Except that we need to get just that half. Okay, so let's hit Control-click on here, and we're going to apply that mask. No, not working. Let's just delete that layer. And now that we have that selection, let's go back and try the Hue Saturation one more time. So now we can click here to go to our Hue Saturation. We can up that saturation. Whoa, that's getting kind of sick. We can even change the hue this way, but that's really not giving me any kind of a result that I need. So I'm going to go back to 0. Here we can go to lightness, and we can dial things back and forth, but probably lightness is not going to be our friend either. So another thing you can do when you're in Hue and Saturation is you can colorize things. So here, not that it's going to help us, but if you wanted to apply this, it's very useful. So I'm going to click that back off. I'm going to dial back on my saturation, and I'm going to try different ways of going in here. So the nice thing about using the adjustment layers is you can click and see how things are working for you. So Hue Saturation really didn't do a whole lot for us here. So let's try and grab another thing, but let's learn from what we did. I'm going to Control-click on the mask, so we have that selected once more. And let's go to Curves. Okay, Curves is a great way of changing the lightness or darkness in something. So I'm going to minimize this so we can see what we have. And here, I can pull this down. Oh, look at that. Now we're getting somewhere. Alright, we can pull pull this up. So you'll notice that this is the high end here where we have our brights, right? And this is our low ends where we have our darks. I'm kind of mirroring this graph here in what we call a histogram. Okay, so I think we really got some good results there. Not only can you change the RGB, but you can also come in here and change the individual channels as well. So here we can add some real differences. Alright, and maybe we want to go down to check the green now. Let's see what that does for us. So we are getting a lot more contrast back in here. Let's see what we get with the blue. The blue, maybe we can pull this over. No, you can approach this a lot of different ways. I don't think this is going to do much for us in the blue. The blue seems to be pretty good. So here we're starting to get somewhere. Let's go back and take a look at red. Red seems a little funky here. Maybe if we move that, no. So let's pull this back out. Our pinks are getting a little hot there. So not so bad, not so bad. So now let's go back, minimize this window, and we're going to go back and take a look at color balance. There we go, there's color balance. So let's minimize this so we can see what we're doing, and play with some of these sliders and see if we can get this looking any more interesting. So here we're getting back more to the alright, and let's go back to our shadows now, and we can keep adjusting things as we keep making changes. So here we're starting to get a very interesting look going here. It does look like the reds are still really pink here. We've got to find a way to subdue those. So let's go and try a different adjustment layer. And I'm always going to click on the top. I think we can do away with our hue saturation. Let's just delete that layer. And let's try a different one. So I'm going to click on this layer so that whatever we add is coming in. So we should have selective color. So now we can try this. In selective color, we can affect just the reds by taking out some black. Let's see what that does. No, not so much. Alright. Maybe we want to fix some of those greens. Let's see what happens if we try and pull some greens back in. It is changing something there. We can check our neutrals. Neutrals is always a crazy place to go. Yeah. Oh, but you know what I just noticed? We do not have our mask in here. So let's try this. Try now create a mask. I'm going to go to select inverse, and let's see what happens if we paint this black. There we go. So what I just did was we had an area selected. I went to the paintbrush and I selected black. So that created the mask over here. So we're starting to get some progress. This is one of the things that you're just going to have to do when you have these horrible little photos, is play with them a little bit. So I'm going to pause here, and then when we come back, I'm going to take a look at the clone tool and how we can fix some of these creases in here.